Hey guys, Dr. Ken Nordberg again with another fireside hunting seminar. Got a really interesting topic today. You're getting down, like I say, what I'm getting to on this series is nitty-gritty things that will help you to take big bucks. And I got a bunch of nitty-gritty stuff in this particular seminar. Some of it is general, why we do this and why we do that. And but this one is more nitty-gritty. The things you look for when hunting big bucks or stand sites. This is the way it usually works for us when scouting pre-season. Like I say, gee, sometimes we'll get home and say, oh, I wish I had more time to hunt over this way or that way. There's so many things that can contribute to whether or not a stand site 2 weeks later is going to be productive. And most guys, they aren't thinking that about much, except I can see a long way here, and oh, there's a good looking deer trail, look at how well it's used, or there's a ground scrape, or they might be saying, I don't even need those things. I'll make a mock scrape here, and it'll be just as good, if not better, because it's going to have doe and rustler's lure in it for 2 weeks. Now, whatever you're thinking about it, you have to go far beyond that. When you find the right spot, you start thinking, oh, I know I'm going to get a buck here. That's the way you start thinking, and you can't wait for opening day. So let's talk about this a little bit. Now, last year, two of my sons, Dave and John, both got a big 10-pointer. One in the morning on opening day and the other one in the afternoon on opening day. And obviously, the fact that they got those two big 10-pointers at these sites took some pretty good preseason scouting. They had to know what they were looking for. So let's start with one that my son Dave got. I'm going to draw some rough maps here. I'm going to start, let's see, with something like this. That's an old clear cut. It's kind of typical of clear cuts in the area we hunt. Oh, there's a little island of timber here, and there's another one over here, and that kind of thing. But that's kind of typical. And some years ago, way up here in this area is a good-sized stand of red oaks. And these been there quite a few, 30 years now, and some of those red oaks have pretty good sizable trunks on them now. And you walk in there today, branches, great big branches, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're busted off and they're hanging down to the ground. It looks like a war zone in there. Because when you have a good bumper crop, well, it doesn't even have to be a bumper crop, we have a lot of acorns growing in those trees, and normally they don't begin falling off the tree till late August. Black bears can't wait. In fact, they like to eat them green, and they're kind of bitter even then, but they can eat the shells. They don't have to spit them out. The green shells break easy and they chew, so they'll go in there and bust branches down in order to eat a lot of acorns during that time. And I might add that bears that have been eating acorns have really taste good. That's really tasty bear meat. But anyway, there was one there some years ago. Dave got his first really big buck right there, sitting on the ground. A beauty, right there, sitting at a ground level stand site, and the thing was right there, only about 30 feet away when he shot it, and which kind of taught him well that, gee, you don't have to be sitting in a tree to get big deer. During the preseason, Dave, who loves to hunt this area all around here, this is a big hill here. They call it Acorn Mountain for reasons, because there's a lot of red oaks on there that produce acorns. Not every year, by the way. Gee, bumper crops. I've only seen 2 bumper crops in 30 years here. Some years there's lots of acorns, and other years there's none at all. So that's important to know. Another reason you need to scout, because see, if there's no acorns here, this is not going to attract deer. Hey guys, just heading north toward a couple of stand sites, a progressive stand site trail, and spotted some typical signs up here this year with our bumper crop of red oak acorns. You see these red oak leaves here, and here's some of their acorns. They're all over in here, and here's some half-inch droppings. Yeah, half-inch droppings. Made by a mature doe or a yearling buck. See, my good buddy Silver, he shot a big buck over here on this side. The last couple years, several years now, my youngest son has shot some big bucks over on that side of that stand of oaks. And a good spot to hunt deer. But you need to know whether it's going to attract deer or not. And if you can go out there in September and probably find a lot of tracks in there made by deer of various sizes if there's acorns on the ground. So in a case like that, all during the season, never forget that. I mean, no matter what you do, you've got to get back to that spot and hunt it from downwind or crosswind sometime during the hunting season. Because whether doe is in estrus feeding there or not, that's still a really good place to hunt deer because of the acorns. That's a dynamite thing. Well, last year it was full. Now, while scouting last year, Dave noticed this area here was all overgrown with red osiers or red bark dogwoods and sugar maple saplings bristling from stumps. This was all logged in here about 10 years ago. And this is just red. You look at it, it's all red in there, year round, just red. And Dave looked at us and said, there's got to be deer in there on opening weekend. Our opening weekend began on the 9th. And deer turned to browse in our area on the 8th. So there's going to be deer feeding in there. There was no tracks in that area right then, but there was lots of those little ragged brown tips on all those favorite browse plants in there, indicating, boy, last year this was a good place during November and December. Now after December, our deer migrate. They migrate westward to a winter area. So it's just during the 2 months from early November to the end of December, usually about Christmas time when they migrate. That's when they're going to be feeding on browse in our hunting area. So he knew that was going to be a good spot, so he picked a stand site about there. And he figured out, well, when you got a north or northwest wind, this way it was north. If you got a north or northwest wind blowing, there was a trail that goes from our camp and goes through this area and goes back up this way, an old trail. And he could get off here and come up to this area and come in through heavy timber all the way to that spot. So good place to approach from without being easily seen by deer. So he really liked that spot there, and it looked pretty good to him. Now, another reason he liked it, it wasn't just the fact that there were all those favorite browse plants in there. All through this area, he scouted this area in between here, were all kinds of tracks of a mature doe with young. And he couldn't get over the fact that, considering all the tracks of the young, seemed to indicate that it had twin yearling does and twin fawns. I mean, it was this little bunch of does, they lived in this area, home range was here, were 5 deer. but none of them with, the biggest one had tracks 3 inches long, which is typical of a mature doe in our hunting area. So all kinds of those. Well, knowing that we're going to be hunting there while breeding was in progress, he was thinking, you know, with 3 deer in there capable of being in heat during that period, the odds of one of them being in heat, say the 2 yearling does plus the mother, were all capable of being in heat and, you know, and bearing young the following spring. With 3 of them in there like that, the odds of seeing one being in heat when he hunts there are going to be greater than if there was just one. So he liked that idea. That sounded really good, you know, to him. That seemed really good. Well, that morning, by the way, when he went there, the wind was from the northwest, coming from that direction. Okay, so all those doe tracks were one thing, and they were fresh dropping, shiny, you know, that kind of thing, 2 weeks before the hunting season. He knew, and trails all over in here, he knew it was in the doe home range. So that was good. He liked that one. That looked really good. Well, another reason he really liked it is because he was also finding big tracks, nearly 4 inches long and clump droppings. Clump droppings are almost always buck droppings. And individual droppings in the clump were nearly 1 inch long. There's a big buck living in this area. This is part of the buck's run. His home range includes that doe range. His home range will have 4 or 5 does living in it, and each in separate ranges. Well, so he knew that the big dominant buck was also spending time here. And then he put a trail cam up there early. The first time he went up there 3 times. And he put a trail cam in, and he got all kinds he got about 150 photographs of deer, you know, filling up his card every time he'd go up there, you know, go up there a week later to do some more scouting. And all kinds of these bucks here, and he was just kind of flabbergasted. There was a whole bunch of them there. And we later figured out he was seeing all the mature bucks, almost all of them, within the surrounding 3 to 4 square miles in this area because they were coming there to eat these acorns. You know, they were coming there in late August and all through September to eat acorns here. So that looked awful good. Man, there's a big buck here, and then one of these will probably be an estrus. And another reason is he found a popple tree here surrounded by great big evergreens, mostly big spruce, white spruce trees, surrounding that thing. And he could put his stand site 10 feet up there and stand in it even and be completely covered. I mean, any deer in the area, no matter where they came from, wouldn't see them unless they were right under the stand. And they couldn't see them there in that tree stand. It was a typical Nordberg tree stand situation. My boys always want lots of evergreens tall enough around their stand tree so that they are going to be really difficult to spot from any direction around them. And that was beautiful. Oh, he liked that one. We've already shown you pictures of the buck's eye view. So anyway, that was another good reason there. So he could get there without being spotted. He could be in that tree stand without being easily spotted. He could be there if he only hunted there while the wind was from the north or the northwest, or he might even, the west probably would have been all right. But then he wouldn't be smelled there. I mean, and there was all these deer here, and boy, all these buck pictures, and you didn't know quite what to expect opening morning. But by that time, you know, by opening morning, all the that dominant breeding buck had chased all these other deer to their private little hideaways. That's where they'll stay. The ones that, they know the story, they know how things work then, and when they get chased off, these experienced older bucks, they know no sense in going back there and just get in trouble again. I'll have to fight that son of a gun again, and I don't want to do that. I mean, he puts the fear into them. And they'll just stay off range till breeding is over, and then they'll come back. But anyway, so, you know, he knew that probably lots of these bucks, or maybe all of them, except one, wouldn't be there opening morning. But what he saw looked just too darn good to want to hunt anywhere else opening morning if the wind was from, like, say, the northwest that was that morning. So he got out there opening morning. And see all the things that went into this point, you know. And this here, at this point, you're a mile from camp. That's a long way out there, you know. And so this, he gets all done with all this 2 weeks before, and you don't go back. You don't go back to get your card out of your trail cam either. You stay out of there for the next 2 weeks before hunting begins. So that big dominant buck will not, by that time, he'll be back in this area doing normal things. If he got scared, alarmed while Dave was doing the scouting, and he scouted all this area over here too, and across here, all around there. But if he managed to alarm that thing enough to make it abandon its length for a while, by 2 weeks it'll be back, and no problem, because we've done this so many times, we know that. But, you know, the average guy might have walked through here and saw none of that. But when a Nordberg, one of my sons or I walk through in there, and we find all this kind of stuff, like I just explained, that is damn exciting. I mean, we're just going to be so anxious to be out there opening morning. It's unbelievable. We are going to be so disappointed if the wind was wrong. Say the wind was from the south. Oh, crap, I can't hunt there with a wind from the south. That would be terrible, you know, blowing this way. So, you can't do that. So it would be terribly disappointing. But when you find something like that, you're just thinking, I'm going to get a big buck there. Probably opening morning. And so that's the way it happened. Well, all these things, you list them all. You know, one of the things I probably should mention again too before I go on here is that stand had never been used before by anybody. You know. So, and Dave didn't mess around there. He didn't cut down all kinds of branches. There wasn't all kinds of destruction there. He didn't see dead branches, bright ends of branches that had been cut off on a tree or laying on the ground around there. He didn't make any shooting lanes. He didn't, there's just nothing there, nothing changed. The only thing that changed is there was a portable up here facing this way, because he's right-handed. But there was a portable in there in that clump. And any deer anywhere around here couldn't see them there. But first time used stand sites, if you had nothing else, you made a list of all the bucks we got, they're almost always, not always, not all of them, but I would say 90% of the time at least, first time used stand sites are the most productive buck stand sites in the woods each year. Never used before. No reason for any buck living in this area to believe this is a dangerous human ambush site. They just didn't know that. They had no reason to believe that. So, come opening morning, he was up at 4 a.m. and by 5:30 he was in that stand. And it got to be first light, finally a half hour came later. And he had does feeding all around, here and here. You'd see them moving. He said, Jesus, does all over the place. Well, it's those 5 antlerless deer that he was seeing. And which is kind of exciting. That looked pretty good. And then pretty soon he heard a grunt back here somewhere, a buck grunt. It was a quiet morning, hardly any breeze at all. You know, good buck grunt, lusty one back there. And that got his attention. And he started watching over there. And pretty soon he heard another grunt, and this time it was obviously much closer. So it was coming in his direction. And then pretty soon it stepped into an opening right here, and facing him. So he shot in the lower part of the neck. It was 80 yards across there. And he's got an opening there. Well, he's 10 feet up here. he probably wouldn't have been able to shoot at the buck, maybe not even see it, if he had been sitting on the ground at that spot. But up 10 feet up there, he could see it, and he had an obvious, looked like a clear opening all the way to the buck. Real careful aim, one shot, and down it went. Opening one. I was sitting way over here. Yeah, I heard that shot straight west of where I was sitting. So, well, somebody got one, and I think it was Dave. And so we don't shoot little bucks on opening morning. You know, we just, if you hear shot opening weekend, that's a big buck, you know. But anyway, that's the way it turned out for sure. Now, you see what we were looking for, you know? You could wander all through this country and never realize what a dynamite spot that is unless you know what you're looking for. The kind of stuff I just told you about. And tracks and droppings are a really important part of it for reasons that you now understand. And foods, being able to recognize what is a feeding area and isn't. Those are all important. If you, I mean, for us, when you're walking through the woods, there's none of my sons and I could walk through this area without seeing that and saying, "Holy cow, look at that," or this, and say, "Holy cow, look at this." You know, none of us could do that. We wouldn't miss that ever. Not once would we miss something like that. And when he goes over here and he finds this clump of evergreens, well, there's a lot of them around this side here, but he found that, oh, this is perfect. I mean, to him, nobody had to tell him, argue with him about, you can sit there, and he knew that was perfect. And where that buck was, there's no way he was going to see Dave from over there, 80 yards away. You look over there, and all I see is this big green, white spruces there. And Dave has head net on, you know, and there's some little holes in the boughs, you know, and the trees around him. He could clearly see the buck. But those were out in front. They were masking him every which way there, and so buck didn't have a chance. And so, anyway, you see what you're looking for? That's a good example right there. Now, I'm going to take a break and come back to this board here in a few minutes, and we'll look at another spot. The spot where my son John got one the same day in the evening. The second stand site I want to talk about was for a ground level stand site. And it's really good for you to see, you know, they're good for you to know. We talked about David's tree stand. Now we're going to talk about John's ground level stand site, where he took a 10-pointer in the evening on the same day, opening day, this last deer hunting season. Nice big 10-pointer, really nice buck. Now, this particular stand site, we've looked at that a few times before. I remember quite a few years ago I took John back there for the first time, and because we were looking at, I've been going back there for years. I was going left from there and going to a point high rocky area where I could look down over a big feeding area. I've seen deer there many times, and so, but on the way there, we found a trail going across a raised ridge place, the only trail like that, a trail going across this big long elder swamps, full of water, and it's just branches overlacing, and crossing that thing is just awful, hard to get across. And you just don't want to do it. But this little highland ridge goes through it toward the narrow south end, and deer could go back and forth between this highland on one side and the highland on the other side freely without getting into that mess of that elder swamp. So we looked at that area a few times years ago, and somehow I never got back to that site, although I took of my buddy Silver from Wisconsin over there a couple times, and but there wasn't a lot of cover there. There was some young pine trees, white pines, big long needles on them in that, scattered around in that area. But John's got a way of hiding himself in other ways. I want to talk to you about that too. But anyway, why was this stand site productive? Well, part of the reason you already know about is this special trail. Now, let's draw a picture of this thing now. You got a trail, it comes out, here's a ridge over here, and go up on this ridge and come down and go up, and then this next ridge starts up here, and usually I would turn and go this way. Well, we found that going up here looked pretty good, and we discovered this ridge going around here, and this is all highland out here and out this way, but this big swamp, this is all elder swamp here. This thing goes for miles. Well, it seems like miles. A mile, a half mile anyway, but it's all elder swamp. Okay? But this isn't, and so deer, this area isn't big enough to be a home range of anything. This little island down on this side, and this one is pretty good size, but deer like to spend time here anyway. But they could go back and forth from this ridge to this ridge here, using this trail here. And this down here, there's a little stream running through here out of this big swamp. Oops, let's do this right here. Big swamp. This is the elder. Big elder swamp. Goes half a mile. And there's this one little ridge here. And then over here, see, that's all elder swamp. Over here is a finger of a clear cut over this way. And this is all nice woods out here, and my wife Jean loved this area. It's real scenic in spots, and we've taken quite a few deer off of this clear cut, years and years and years. Years ago we had a trail that went off across the bog to get there, and that was the most awful thing. Especially when you had to drag a deer back to camp. We'd go across that elder swamp, and big puddles of water, and they were all muddy and just wore out from dragging a big buck through that thing. And so, anyway, but we hunted fairly often in this area back in here. And so when we found this spot, we thought, oh boy, a nice easy way to get onto this highland back here. And the deer knew that too, and there was a deer trail going down the center of it over to here. And it went this way and this way. But so it was a well-used deer trail. Now, well-used deer trails don't impress us very much if there's no buck tracks in them. Two of the biggest buck I've taken, the last of the biggest bucks I've taken, where other deer didn't go. One was at one of these hiding areas, big 13-point or 12-pointer I got there, where the buck was spending his time while breeding was in progress away from the dominant breeding buck of the area. And but boy, did he turn out to be a nice big buck, huge buck. But there he was, and we found trails. They crossed there, and the only tracks we were seeing is these great big tracks. And this seemed really weird. And there was a ground scrape on it that went across a portion of an old logging trail that was all grown up except this grassy area. And one end there was a fresh antler rub on a tree about 5 inches in diameter. And in the middle of that grassy area, the deer trail, and there was a ground scrape was 6 feet long and about 3 feet wide, right in the middle of that. And So which ground scrapes and antler rubs are not, well, they're common in areas where these lesser adult bucks spend their time during the breeding season. They'll maintain and make ground scrapes and antler rubs in that particular area, so that was typical. But and I knew that too, and I didn't expect to be a really big buck, except where these two trails where the junction was right next to where that big ground scrape was, they're all big tracks, back and forth, and really used a lot, so that most of the trail was dirt because the sharp hoofs of that big heavy buck were cutting through all the vegetation on the trail. So with dirt, and there's see these great big tracks and big droppings along the trail. That excited me really well. Well, anyway, back to here. So this was a trail too, and we, that doesn't mean, oh man, we're gonna hunt this trail. But there were a lot of tracks, fresh and old, of different sizes here, including tracks of the big buck on there, and droppings. Tracks, well, they weren't quite 4 inches, and there were droppings, maybe a little more than 3/4 of an inch, 5/8 and 3/4 inch long kind of droppings, fresh and old on that trail. That's exciting. We then knew, here's a trail that's being used by a big buck. Now, this was the only trail where you didn't have to plow through flooded elders to go from one highland area to the other. So in this case, a well-used trail, you would expect it to be well-used, and in this case it was also being well-used by a big buck. Well, when John went out on our old trail, going back here, because we used it a couple of years to get back into this area and over here, he found a big antler rub on this highland over here, great big one. This was not made by a little teeny buck. This was made by probably a big dominant breeding buck. There was one there. He didn't see something like this. He was scouting 2 and 3 weeks early. John went up twice. But on the way in, it was getting close to the side. He saw a deer running ahead of him. And it wasn't seriously alarmed. It was, as it went, its tail was up, but it wasn't really widely fanned, and it was wagging slightly from side to side, and got over to this area and kind of disappeared. And he wasn't sure if it was a buck or doe, but there was a deer there hanging around this area right here when he got in there. But it wasn't seriously alarmed, and that's a good thing to know. And that particular day too, the wind was from the northwest. So anyway, he found that. Now, when he was scouting, and we've seen this before, over in this area here was deep grass. And not many trees, sparse timber and there, but deep grass and big boulders. And in the deep grass we found several great big beds. They were big bed length, like when they get up over 50 inches, that's a good sized buck, the length of the bed up in our country. And we've found some in the past as long as 56 inches. But when you get over 50, you're looking at a good sized deer in that deep grass. And big bucks, and so do does. They like to lay in deep grass. When they lay down, they're instantly hidden. And they can put their heads up and look out over the glass, see what might be coming when they hear sounds. But not a bad place to be, because there's some pretty good escape areas. Like, boy, if you had things chasing, you could run out into this awful place here, and the wolves would be discouraged to follow in there really quick, because bucks can jump over elders while they're going, and wolves can't, and so it would really slow the wolves down pretty soon. They'd finally give up. Great escape area over this way. Hard to get through, but bucks use those kind of things. So anyway, so there was all these things. I was thinking, well, if you got a northwest wind, well, it turned out opening morning there was a northwest wind, and the place where we really wanted to go is at a place more than a mile away from the 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from there. But you could only hunt there with a south wind. He was hoping for a south wind opening morning, which often happens in previous hunting seasons, south winds opening morning. But then we had a northwest wind predicted, so he couldn't go to that place. No way he could use the new trail he made to get to that particular stand site without being smelled by any deer within or surrounding that feeding area, or the old feeding area, that, where he had taken some bucks in the past. So he decided, well, he'll try this. He'll go there. Probably less enthusiastic than he would have been if he'd been able to go to the other place, but still, this was pretty good. And he couldn't get over the knowing this had been used by a big buck, and a big buck had bedded here, and this was the only crossing of this awful elder swamp right here. And this is all big, thick, heavy cover, and geez, all the way from our camp was right about in there. He could get all the way in there without deer seeing him, and if he did it carefully, and it was a nice fresh blanket of snow on the ground that day, he could do that. And during the daytime, he could really watch his step and get in there real quietly. And he went over to, where is it? On this ridge, and picked a spot where he could see that trail, and he was downwind of it. And there was not a lot of cover there, but John, over the years, he's developed a technique of hiding himself that's been pretty effective. He's been out there in snow with no cover at all to speak of, sitting on a stool, and had sizable bucks, 8-pointers, walking right by him that he thought, well, he didn't want to shoot that one because there was a bigger one in the area he knew. And so I let him go by, and they never even saw him. You know, it was downwind of him, of course. But what he did, he sits down on a stool, and there was some evergreens there. There were these pine trees with long needles, and there was some there. And he found a spot where he could put a stool in front of one of those pine trees and lean back on it. And lower boughs of pine trees around him were sticking out over his lap out in front of him, up to his shoulders here. So it was just kind of a V-shaped area here where he was actually exposed. Now, he carries around with him, it looks like some kind of an old rag somebody threw out on the highway 10 years ago, but it's a camouflage thing with all these loose parts on it, a net with all this stuff kind of thing, and he puts it on like around his neck, and hangs down in front of him right here. He does that every once in a while wherever he sits.
The buck I got is right over there.
And he put that on, and in that V-shaped notch, deer couldn't see him from any direction around him, and in front of him, where the trail was out in front of him, with that on there, they could not see even blaze orange, except on his cap. And then, of course, he was wearing his camel head net, with the oblong eye hole there. He had that on, his cap on there, and that was, and he put that on over on top of it. And he's sitting there, and he sit real still there where he was, and deer could be walking up and down that trail all day, and they'd never notice him. And he was downwind, and perfect spot, you know. So yeah. So and then out in front of him, he carries a bipod around, that's not a bad idea. A bipod is a two-legged thing. It's adjustable, and he puts it down in front of him, and he lays his rifle on top of that for a rock-steady aim. And it's especially good when you have to shoot great distances, but it's also good when you got a big buck out front of you. It's easy to get really excited about that and not shoot too accurately, and no great, it's easy to, if you're a stand hunter, you're sitting in this spot for 4 hours, that's no hardship to bring a bipod out and set it up in front of you and put your rifle in there. And it's right up there where it's handy when it's time to shoot at something, you know, where you expect a buck to appear. So no movement at all, particularly. Just lean over there and there you are. There he is. So he does that all the time. You know, works really well for him this last year. He did excellent shooting on 3 big dominant breeding bucks. And this was the first of them this last year. So anyway, there he was. It was starting to get late. And pretty soon, there it was. It was coming on the trail this way and it probably, you know, big bucks they're not really nuts about traveling downwind, but they can't travel up to the wind all of the time because wherever they go, if they want to go back, like they start off from the bedding area, now I want to go back to my bedding area, they got to go downwind as far as they did upwind. But when they do that, they want lots of heavy cover, and there was plenty of heavy cover around this trail, all the way over to where John was sitting, on both sides, kind of a mess. And not only that, where he was sitting on this ridge here, the end of this rocky ridge, kind of more of a rocky outcropping, this Canadian shield country here, he was about 20 to 30 feet above this trail. It's way up there. It's like his ground level stand was like a tree stand, 20 feet up in a tree. Only he was much less visible to any deer in the area than he would have been if he'd been 20 feet up in a tree there. But we do that a lot where we hunt. That's something we look forward to. We look for it. You know, anytime we got an elevation, a rocky outcropping, a hillside, a ridge, whatever, that gives us elevation above where we expect the deer to show up, we use it. We use elevations. Just because we're ground level hunters doesn't mean we're always down here at the same level as the deer. Every time we can. In John's case, 2 of the bucks he shot this last year, he was about 20 feet higher than the elevation where the buck was. He was up there. You know, it's like being in a tree stand, but completely safe. I mean, you aren't going to get hurt if you fall off a stool. So you aren't going to slip going from a tree step onto the platform of your tree stand when you're down there at ground level either. You know, you don't have to make that dangerous step. All you have to do is turn around and sit down. You don't have to attach to a tree, you don't have to hook up a harness, you don't have anything. You just put your stool down silently, turn around and sit down on it, and you're ready to go. So anyway, so he had all these good things going for him here. See, he knows all these things, you put it all together, and John couldn't help but think, I'm going to see a big buck here. And he did. And everybody was in camp already. It was getting dark. We heard a shot over here. And about 15 minutes later, John burst in a tent with his big smile and says, I got a big one. But everybody was getting back to camp then, and we put together a dragging crew. I didn't. You know, being the old guy, I'm almost 85 now. But all these young studs, some of the new grandsons and such, they go out there and you can't keep up to them when they're dragging a buck. They're moving along pretty good. They got the buck tied to a toboggan, big plastic toboggan. Well, anyway, so we got the dragging crew and came back along this direction. This old clear cut, it opens up all the way back to camp. So as far as that part goes, that was a much easier drive than it would have drag than it would have been going back the way it came in. But you see, these are more things you look for. And there's, like I said, when describing David's stand site, there is not a Nordberg. Well, none of my sons or I could ever walk through this area with a wind like that, or, you know, with a northwest wind, or when we have one and we know it's going to be, or we plan for it, without realizing this is a heck of a spot to hunt. this is a heck of a spot to take a big buck. Big buck signs, all these other signs here, they all come together on this great cover for getting there and all these things. The ability to become invisible here at ground level. Now, most of the time, wherever I go, I got really heavy cover in front of me, a downed tree, big old evergreen or so, all kinds of branches around it, and that kind of natural spot sit behind. Don't change a thing. Don't make it obvious something different is about that stand site, and just make use of that. Maybe clear out an area where I'm going to put this tool, you know, dead branches, stuff, move those aside, and just step in there and put my stool down. Maybe a tree right here I can lean back against. I like that, but I can do without it. And you put your head net on, and my camel blaze orange cap over the top of that. And this part, the only thing a deer would be able to see coming along out in front of you, that's the only thing visible that might be moving. And with your head net on, it's like magic, because they'll look right at you 2-3 times and never realize that's a human. They think it's some kind of a grouse or something, weird looking grouse. They don't know what they think they're seeing there, but that pays off. But good concealment, you know, you gotta have that. And John with that goofy thing he carries around, that camel thing he puts around his neck, and he's got 2 of them actually. One he'll even put over his lap if necessary. But he can hide himself really well wherever he sits using them. And in fact, the second deer he was sitting in front of a boulder with those draped camel pieces on him. You'll see a picture of it. I'll have a picture of it here. And they won't notice him, you know, and head net on, and they'll look at him. What is that? They might have said, I heard a doe over there. That doe that's in heat here, I think that must be it. I heard that or something over there. So I go sneaking over there, and he looks over there. What in the world is that? Can't figure it out. So, yeah, those are great things, but these are things to know. You know, these, like I say, nitty gritty. But shouldn't call them nitty gritty. They're huge things to know. But the kind of things you got to do to be regularly successful for taking big bucks. Well, with that, we'll leave you here for today, and hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, be sure to poke that red button down below there that wants to subscribe on it. It'll only take you a minute to do that, and it's important to me so to be able to continue providing you with seminars like this. You won't get seminars like this anywhere else. This is where you're going to get seminars like this. Only other place to find that kind of information is in my 10th edition. So, long after I'm gone, you can refer to your copy, reminding you of everything you need to know to hunt older bucks. I mean, this is it. This is the only book in the world, the only source of this kind of information. No doubt, years to come, there's going to be people copying terms and knowledge from this book. I want as many hunters to be able to do as successful at hunting older bucks as us Nordbergs are. So, yeah, take advantage of a book like that. Well, with that, thanks for watching me. I got more good stuff. You know, this is the third of, I don't know, about 8 subjects I'm going to cover in future seminars that are in the same thing, you know, hunting feeding areas and stand hunting techniques that go along with it. This is just the beginning. So be sure to watch for my next seminar. You're going to enjoy that, I can guarantee you that. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you again soon, and take it easy now between now and then. Be good. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries, my website bookstore, and much more.